Your duty is to yourself. That might sound selfish at first, but let me show you why it is not. In fact, it's the very opposite. It is the foundation of integrity, stability, and all meaningful service. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give what you do not have. The person who cannot lead themselves cannot lead others. This is not a moral judgment. It is a practical truth. Life unfolds in chapters: childhood, adulthood, relationships, careers, aging. Each stage demands different energies and sacrifices, but one law governs them all: self-responsibility. Whether you're young and seeking purpose or older and responsible for a family, one principle remains constant: you must take care of yourself. Your well-being is not a luxury, it is a duty, it is your post. Abandon it, and everything around you may crumble. Remain at your post, and others can find strength in your presence. This video is not about isolation. It is not about turning inward and ignoring the world. It is about preparing yourself so that you can stand tall when the storm comes, so you can give strength, not drain it, so you can walk with clarity, not confusion. The Stoics knew this, and you will too. Let us begin with what the Stoics would call the groundwork of personal duty. Chapter 1. Self-command is the beginning of all order. The Stoics were firm in one belief: if you cannot rule yourself, you cannot expect to rule anything else. Epictetus, once a slave, became a philosopher by taking charge of the only thing he truly owned: his mind. "No man is free," he said, "who is not master of himself." In today's world, distractions are endless. Notifications, temptations, digital entertainment, and the relentless noise of social approval all compete for your attention. From the moment you wake up, you're bombarded with signals that pull you away from your center. It is easy to drift, to lose your grounding, to become a servant to reaction instead of a steward of response. Many people live this way, constantly pulled by external forces, without ever pausing to consider who is steering their ship. But the Stoics remind us, we are not here to drift aimlessly across the sea of life. We are here to take the helm, to steer our course with clarity and purpose. Self-command begins not with force, but with awareness. You must know where your mind is at any given moment before you can effectively direct it. Ask yourself honestly, are you angry today? Jealous of someone? Lazy or avoiding discomfort? It may sting to admit these things, but denying that truth helps no one, least of all you. Acknowledging your emotional and mental state is the first act of self-leadership. And then, once you see yourself clearly, you begin the work. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily, not because he wanted admiration, but because he understood the fragility of virtue without reflection. He corrected himself constantly, using his own hand to guide his return to reason, not for public acclaim, but because he knew the soul, left unchecked, drifts toward disorder. If you hope to lead anyone, be it your family, a team, or even a friend, you must first be someone who can lead themselves. You cannot be a lighthouse to others if your own light is dim or chaotic. That inner light, the kind that steadies others during life's storms, only shines through daily discipline. It comes from consistent effort, from routines that ground your values, and from the solemn understanding that no external force is ultimately responsible for your peace. The weight of your life rests squarely on your shoulders. The Stoics believed that was not a burden, but a gift. For when you claim full responsibility, you claim full power. It is on you to uphold your duty, to build your character, and to be the one who remains upright in a world that sways with the winds of impulse and distraction. Start each day by asking, "What am I in charge of today?" And answer truthfully, not what you wish you were in charge of, but what you are truly responsible for. Your thoughts, your choices, your reactions. Before you open your phone or speak to the world, take 5 minutes. Write down 3 things you will command in yourself today. That small ritual builds the fortress. Chapter 2. The danger of neglecting yourself. When you do not take care of yourself, you invite chaos. Mental, physical, emotional chaos. The neglect may seem small at first. A skipped workout, a late night, a conversation you avoid. But these things add up. The Stoics taught that vice is born from neglect, not evil. Neglect is dangerous because it is easy. It rarely feels like a decision. But failing to choose is a choice, and it always costs more than we expect. Seneca warned, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." We act as if we have unlimited time to fix ourselves, unlimited patience from those around us, and endless chances to get things right. But the truth is, we do not. Time is slipping through our fingers each day, and with every choice we make, or fail to make, we are shaping the direction of our lives. Every moment wasted is a moment we cannot reclaim. The minutes stack into hours, the hours into days, and those days become the architecture of our existence. The neglect of one's health becomes disease, not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally as well. The body grows weak, the mind grows dull, and the soul forgets its purpose. The neglect of one's mind invites confusion, self-doubt, and a fog that makes even the simplest decisions feel overwhelming. When clarity is lost, purpose follows closely behind. The neglect of one's values doesn't just lead to guilt, it leads to a slow decay of self-respect, and eventually deep and gnawing regret that whispers through every quiet moment. To neglect yourself is not a passive act. It is an act of quiet self-destruction, a betrayal of your own potential. It is to slowly, imperceptibly disappear from your own life until you are merely going through the motions, like a puppet disconnected from its strings. You become a ghost among the living, a hollow presence reacting to the demands of the world while initiating nothing of your own. You lose your inner voice, your sense of agency, your very essence. Your laughter becomes forced, your passions dim, and your decisions driven by inertia rather than intention. This is not what humility looks like. This is not what sacrifice means. This is abandonment of your post, your role, your sacred duty to yourself. And the Stoics would be clear, such neglect is not a form of modesty or servitude. It is injustice, an injustice to your soul, which was not given to you so it could be ignored, overlooked, or slowly broken. Your soul is your most valuable possession, and caring for it is not vanity, it is virtue. It is stewardship of the most sacred thing you own. To neglect that is to betray not just yourself, but the people who depend on the best of you, the future that needs your presence, and the path that you alone are meant to walk. Keep a simple chart of your health, mindset, and values. Daily. Not for others to see, but for you, to act as a mirror that reflects your real efforts and honest behaviors. Break it down into morning, afternoon, and evening assessments if needed. Score yourself 1 to 5 and go beyond vague answers. Was your sleep sufficient and restorative? Did you fuel your body with nutritious food and movement, or did you neglect it? Did you move your body intentionally or let the day slip by in inertia? Did you speak the truth in moments where it was tempting to avoid discomfort? Did you show patience where it was most difficult, or did frustration rule your tone? Track your attention. What did you give your energy to? Scrolling or reading, gossip or reflection, distraction or growth? If you do not measure, you cannot improve. If you do not monitor, you cannot correct. What you do not track becomes what you unconsciously tolerate. And the Stoic path tolerates nothing that does not serve your higher aim. Chapter 3. Service requires strength. Caring for others is noble, But what happens when your foundation is weak? You collapse under the weight, or worse, you bring others down with you. The Stoics knew this, and they warned against it. Stoicism is not cold, it is responsible. Service is sacred. And that's why you must be strong before you serve. Imagine a soldier who doesn't train, a parent who doesn't sleep, a leader who hides from truth. They may mean well, but they are dangerous to depend on. Your good intentions are not enough. Your capacity is what matters. That capacity comes from habits, from routines, from inner honesty. It is not something you can borrow, outsource, or fake your way through. It is built day by day, in quiet moments of discipline and decision. Self-care is not indulgence. It is not some luxury reserved for when everything else is done. It is investment, strategic, deliberate, and essential. The time you spend strengthening your body, feeding your mind with clarity, and clarifying your values is time that compounds. It grows quietly, but powerfully. You may not see its results every day, but when adversity comes, when chaos knocks on your door, you will find that the work you've done has not been in vain. Later, when you are tested, and you will be tested, that compound interest becomes resilience. Not just to survive, but to stay grounded, to act wisely under pressure, to guide others when they are lost. Remember, life does not wait for you to feel ready. The call comes at inconvenient times, when you're tired, busy, uncertain, or afraid. It does not pause for your preparation. It demands your action now. Life's trials don't coordinate with your schedule or your mood. They arrive uninvited, often at your weakest moment, and they do not ask if you are comfortable or willing. They simply show up, and you must answer. And when it comes, who will you be? Will you shrink into the shadows of doubt and hesitation, or will you rise with calm urgency, anchored by the inner structure you've built over months and years of preparation? Will you falter and disappear into excuses, or will you answer with quiet conviction and steady breath? Stoicism does not promise you immunity from difficulty. It offers you the clarity to meet that difficulty with strength, the kind of strength that is calm, enduring, and deeply rooted in self-awareness. It reminds you that suffering cannot be avoided entirely, but it can be faced nobly, even transformed into growth. It asks you to prepare, not tomorrow, not next week, but now, because there is no later. The moment is always now. Every day you delay is another day untrained, another opportunity to cultivate resilience lost. The practice must be consistent, habitual, almost sacred. Discipline cannot be something you reach for only in emergencies. It must be your constant companion, your way of life. It is the repetition of training, the steady daily discipline, the inner rehearsals that sharpen your character and protect you from being overwhelmed. You rehearse hardship not because you want it, but because life guarantees it. That you train daily for that moment when the storm hits, when you must hold fast, when others around you begin to falter. That you fortify your character, not just for your sake, but for those around you, your children, your team, your community, and even strangers who will draw strength from your presence. Because someone, somewhere, will need you strong, not perfect, not flawless, but strong in spirit, unwavering in principle, calm under pressure, rooted like a tree that bends but does not break. That strength isn't born in the moment, it is revealed by the work done in solitude, in early mornings and quiet nights, in the 1,000 choices no one sees. The world doesn't need more people chasing comfort. There is already an abundance of individuals avoiding discomfort, silencing their potential under the illusion that ease is the ultimate aim. But life doesn't reward those who chase ease. It reveals the truth to those who prepare. It needs people who are prepared to lead with compassion and clarity, to support with wisdom and empathy, to sacrifice when needed without falling into resentment, and to carry weight that others cannot, not because they are forced to, but because they have trained to be capable. The world needs those whose strength is not loud or performative, but quiet, enduring, and unshakable. It needs those who can stand firm when everything else shakes, who do not collapse when faced with resistance or difficulty. Their foundation must be solid, built not in haste or from borrowed ideologies, but in discipline and humility. It is the kind of preparation that arises from years of intentional living, of inner work, of choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. Their discipline is not a show, it is a habit. Their humility is not weakness, it is strength restrained and directed. And that kind of readiness, that level of resilience, always begins within. It starts in the small decisions made when no one is watching. It grows in silence. It matures through consistency. This inner strength does not arrive by luck or through wishful thinking. It is not gifted to the fortunate or stumbled upon in crisis. It is earned, patiently, quietly, and consistently. It is the slow building of an internal fortress through self-reflection, deliberate action, and courageous choices. The Stoic understands this truth. Greatness is not something you chase. It is something you embody through duty, discipline, and the relentless choice to rise every day and meet the world prepared. Choose a small daily ritual that builds your strength. It might be a cold shower, a walk without your phone, a daily workout routine, or a difficult conversation you initiate. It could also be reading philosophy for 15 minutes each morning, journaling your thoughts without judgment, or sitting in stillness to observe your breath before the chaos of the day begins. The specific practice matters less than your commitment to it. Let this ritual be your anchor, a space where your mind is reminded daily of your principles and your inner resilience is slowly forged through action. Make it non-negotiable. This is not something you do when it's convenient or when you're motivated. It is something you do because you've made a vow to yourself, because your integrity depends on it. Each time you honor that ritual, no matter how small it is, you reinforce the belief that you are someone who shows up, someone who prepares, someone who does the hard things, not just for self-gain, but because life may call on you to be strong. And when that time comes, you will not hesitate. You will have already practiced strength 1,000 times. Not because you feel like it, but because others might someday depend on you. And you, most of all, must depend on yourself. When fatigue whispers excuses and doubt clouds your resolve, you must still rise. There may come a moment when someone you love is crumbling and looks to you for steadiness. They won't need perfection, they'll need presence. They'll need someone who has practiced carrying weight so they can shoulder it when it counts. And if no one else is watching, you must still be that person for yourself. That consistency becomes a lifeline, not just to survive, but to thrive, because it trains your mind to stay reliable through uncertainty. In the face of hardship, your discipline becomes proof that you can rely on your own strength, that your will is not governed by emotion, but by your sense of purpose. And that foundation, daily earned, is what makes you unshakable when the world wavers. Chapter 4. The difference between selfishness and self-respect. People often confuse self-focus with selfishness, but they are not the same. The difference is not merely semantic, it is foundational. Selfishness is rooted in fear, the fear that there isn't enough to go around, the fear that giving something to others means less for oneself. It hoards, isolates, and controls. It makes decisions based on insecurity and scarcity. But self-focus, when guided by virtue and reason, is rooted in responsibility. It recognizes that to give your best to others, you must first be in possession of your best self. It is the discipline of stewardship, not the indulgence of ego. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire, yet he wrote constantly about checking his ego, about returning to humility, about aligning his power with principle, not to abandon his needs, but to align them with justice, with the needs of the state, the people, and his moral compass. He did not neglect himself or diminish his worth. He simply understood that his actions must serve both his nature and the world. He knew that by strengthening his mind, checking his impulses, and clarifying his duties, he could be a more reliable source of leadership and stability. To respect yourself is to make decisions that protect your future, not just in the distant sense, but in each moment. Every interaction, every response, every small decision is a thread in the fabric of who you are becoming. To turn down gossip not because you are above it, but because you respect your peace, because you know that adding noise to the world only takes you further from clarity. To walk away from toxic situations not because you are superior, but because you have learned, sometimes through pain, that energy is precious and must not be wasted on what diminishes your spirit. To honor your time because it is the currency of your life, the one asset you can never reclaim once spent, and to spend it with care is to honor the miracle of your own existence. This kind of respect isn't flashy, it doesn't draw applause. It is quiet, internal, consistent, and often invisible to the outside world. And yet, it is powerful beyond measure. It builds an invisible fortress within you that protects your joy, sharpens your discernment, and steadies your presence. That is not selfish. That is wisdom forged through experience and humility. It is a form of self-dignity that needs no defense and asks for no permission. And it inspires others to do the same. It sets an example not through pressure, but through presence. It invites those around you to pause, to think, to raise their own standards, not by judgment, but by witnessing what integrity looks like in action. Your life is not a rehearsal. It is the performance, every single day, every moment, a chance to refine your role, to embody your values, and to contribute meaningfully to the world around you. There are no practice rounds, no do-overs, no guaranteed tomorrows. This moment, right now, is the only one you truly possess, and it is the stage on which your character is forged and displayed. Each decision is a brushstroke on the canvas of your life, each action a rehearsal not for some future show, but for the unfolding now. To take your role lightly is to risk drifting through life on autopilot, reacting instead of acting, surviving instead of living. Every choice either builds your character or erodes it, chisels you into something sturdy, or reduces you into something unsteady, scattered, and uncertain. No moment is too small to matter. In fact, the seemingly insignificant moments, the choice to respond with patience when irritated, to stay focused when distraction tempts, to pause when anger flares, are the raw material of true strength. Every time you tell the truth instead of a convenient lie, every time you keep a promise to yourself no matter how small, every time you choose stillness over chaos, you are shaping something unshakable within. Your habits, your words, your silence, they are all tools in this great sculpture. With each action, you're layering strength upon strength, constructing a soul that can withstand hardship without crumbling. And this sculpture is not simply for display. It is not a mask or a performance. It is a living embodiment of who you are becoming, a functional art form, the foundation others will lean on in times of crisis, the lighthouse that will help navigate stormy seas when all other lights have gone out. Your daily decisions become the scaffolding that supports both your own life and the lives you touch. Your character, formed by this relentless shaping, is your legacy. Not your wealth, your titles, or your possessions, which can vanish as quickly as they arrive, but the durable quality of your being. Your legacy is the quality of your presence, the courage in your convictions, and the depth of your consistency. It is what others feel when they sit in your presence, calm, order, focus, integrity, and a grounded strength that requires no performance. Self-respect is the quiet power behind every strong person. It is the force that steadies the hand, calms the breath, and sharpens the decision. It is the unseen engine that fuels noble action, that keeps the compass aligned even when the world pulls in opposing directions. It is the internal compass that keeps you from wandering too far from who you are meant to be. It is the root system of your tree, invisible but essential, keeping you upright through wind, time, and storm. It is the steady hand behind every right decision, especially the ones that go unnoticed and unpraised. The choices that define you not by what others see, but by what you stand for when no one is watching. It is what allows you to sleep peacefully, act confidently, speak with honesty, and walk through life with an inner compass that no storm can shake, because it was never anchored in circumstance, but in truth. And that kind of compass, once established, becomes a force no misfortune can bend. It becomes the kind of strength others recognize without needing explanation, a silent authority born of character, not ego. Make a list of 5 non-negotiables that reflect self-respect. These are not just habits or tasks, they are your personal boundaries, the rituals that preserve your sense of dignity, order, and peace. This could include things like prioritizing 7 hours of quality sleep, dedicating uninterrupted time with loved ones, maintaining a sacred hour for solitude, reading something enriching every day, or moving your body through intentional exercise. It could also include journaling, prayer, time in nature, eating clean meals, or protecting your mornings from digital clutter. These non-negotiables are not luxuries. They are guardrails that prevent your life from veering off the road of purpose. They preserve your inner clarity and protect the flame of your spirit from being smothered by chaos or neglect. When you keep them, you affirm to yourself that your well-being is worthy of protection and structure. They keep you from slipping into patterns of avoidance or self-abandonment. You should treat them with the same weight and seriousness as any job, deadline, or external obligation. In fact, they might be more important because these are the contracts you keep with yourself, and no one's word should matter more to you than your own. Chapter 5. The Daily Battle and the Will to Continue. Even when we understand our duty, we will face resistance from others, from the world, from ourselves. There will be days when it feels pointless, when your actions appear to yield no results, when progress feels like a mirage, when motivation disappears, and all you have left is the echo of your own discipline, when your progress is invisible, when the weight feels heavier than usual, as though life is asking more of you than you have left to give. The Stoics did not promise ease, they promised meaning, not comfort, but character, not shortcuts, but strength. And meaning, real meaning, often comes dressed as adversity. Discipline is not always rewarded quickly. Often, no one claps for you. No one hands you a trophy for showing up when it was hard. No one sees the quiet sacrifices, the extra hour of focus when everyone else is resting, the painful conversation you chose to have instead of keeping silent, the temptation you resisted while no one was watching. There are no cheering crowds for self-restraint. There is no spotlight on integrity, but this is the very nature of discipline. It is quiet, invisible, and deeply personal. It exists when the world has forgotten you, and you must still remember yourself. And yet, you must continue, because your life is your responsibility. And that responsibility doesn't clock out. It doesn't care if you're tired or underappreciated. It doesn't wait for you to feel inspired. That is the battle, every day, against distraction that lures you from your purpose, convincing you to trade your long-term clarity for a moment of ease, against despair that tells you it's all for nothing and tries to convince you that effort is wasted, against the temptation to quit and choose the numbness of mediocrity over the pain of progress. The world will not pause to encourage you, and the applause you seek may never come. But your duty remains. It waits for you to return, even if you have wandered. It calls you back, even if you failed before. This is where courage lives, not in grand gestures or heroic declarations, but in the silence, in the repetition, in the ordinary unseen moments when you decide to show up again and again and again. It lives in the soft discipline of choosing to honor your word when no one is checking. It hides in the discomfort of continuing when comfort offers you an escape. It reveals itself when you put your feet on the floor one more time, tie your shoes one more time, take the first step one more time. In the choice to stand up one more time, not because you're unbreakable, but because you've decided not to stay broken. Because you've learned that every fall is an invitation to rise wiser, more grounded, and more determined. Because you've come to understand that the smallest victories, the breath taken instead of yelling, the stretch instead of staying still, the apology instead of pride, are the substance of real transformation. If it is endurable, Marcus Aurelius wrote, then endure it. If not, stop complaining. Your destruction will mean its end as well. That is the blunt clarity of Stoicism. It does not flatter your feelings. It does not promise reward. It does not give you excuses. It does not offer applause. It simply calls you to rise. It whispers, even when no one sees you, even when you feel alone in the fight. Get up. Answer the world with the best you have, even when it hurts, even when no one knows, even when you doubt. Because discipline is a promise you keep with yourself. And courage is not loud. It is the quiet agreement between your values and your will. You are not meant to coast through life. You are meant to rise through it, to engage with difficulty not as an interruption, but as a calling, to walk through pain with your eyes open and your chest lifted, not because it doesn't hurt, but because you've chosen to face it head-on, to carry yourself through the storms of life with poise, even when you are drenched in uncertainty, to allow resistance to become your teacher and not your enemy, to learn from the friction rather than resent it. The grind, the challenge, the tension, they are not your barriers, they are your builders. To be formed by resistance, not flattened by it, is to embrace the weight of life as your training ground. Every burden becomes a lesson, every obstacle a whetstone. To build something unshakable within you through adversity, through trial, through repetition, again and again, until your strength is no longer something you summon, but something you are. Until your character becomes a fortress, not because it is impenetrable, but because it has been tested and rebuilt countless times. To understand that the goal is not to win every battle, but to stay in the fight, to remain engaged with your values, even when your emotions rebel, to return stronger, sharper, more deliberate with each fall, with each failure, to persist, even wounded, because healing is part of growth, and scarring does not disqualify you. It defines your endurance. To move, even uncertain, because action is clarity's invitation. To act with conviction even when your confidence wavers, because conviction is born from principles, not feelings. To give your best when you feel like giving nothing, because that is when it matters most. That is the soil of honor. That is duty. That is what builds a life of value, not ease, but endurance, not success, but steadfastness. A life of value is not measured in fleeting pleasures or convenient victories. It is measured in your ability to stand firm when nothing around you is stable. It is measured in how often you choose what is right over what is easy. It is forged not in sunlight, but in storm. True success isn't found in applause or accolades, but in the resilience to hold your course when the road disappears, when the map fails, and when the winds of life blow hardest against your will. It is in this struggle, this continual renewal of effort, this invisible courage that few witness, that we find not just who we are, but who we are capable of becoming. For in each moment we endure what we thought we couldn't. We step closer to a truer version of ourselves, a version not propped up by praise or sheltered by luck, but built on the foundation of integrity and discipline. This strength isn't just about weathering storms. It's about emerging from them clearer, sharper, and more in command of yourself than before. It's about choosing to respond with virtue when it would be easier to collapse into vice. And that is the true gift of difficulty. It reveals the depth of your strength, the shape of your character, and the measure of your spirit. It peels away illusion and demands the real from you. It calls for your essence, not your performance. Not once, not suddenly, but one choice, one morning, one moment at a time. Again and again, until your identity fuses with the integrity of your actions. Until who you are is indistinguishable from the discipline that shaped you. And in that place, you are unshakable. Not because life is easier, but because you are sturdier. Because your values have roots and your decisions have backbone. And because you know, deeply, that to do your duty is not a burden, it is your honor. Create a fallback list for hard days. These are your go-to recovery rituals, your emergency anchors for moments when the weight of life feels overwhelming. Include 5 to 7 simple yet grounding actions you can take when you're mentally foggy, emotionally drained, or physically depleted. These actions don't need to be monumental. In fact, they work best when they are small, accessible, and repeatable. Examples include taking a walk outside and focusing on your breath, journaling for 5 minutes without censoring your thoughts, performing a short breathing exercise such as box breathing, drinking a tall glass of water slowly while standing still, calling a trusted friend or mentor who centers you, taking a cold shower to shock your nervous system into alertness, or even sitting in silence for 2 minutes with your hand on your chest. These actions are not about escape, they are about return. They are designed to reconnect you with your present moment and your internal sense of control. These fallback actions are your rope. They don't fix everything, but they pull you back from the edge. They remind your nervous system that you are not helpless, that even on your worst day, you are still capable of choice. Print this list. Keep it visible. Read it when your mind wants to disappear into distraction or despair. These are your lifelines, and reaching for them is not weakness. It is the strength of someone who refuses to surrender. Chapter 6. Stoic Responsibility and the Rejection of Victimhood. One of the harshest truths the Stoics ask us to accept is this: no matter what has happened to you, your response is your responsibility. This does not mean the Stoics denied pain or injustice. They simply refused to let those things define the soul. Epictetus endured slavery. Marcus Aurelius endured the plague, betrayal, and war. Yet neither man wrote in self-pity. Why? Because they understood something radical. To let pain make you bitter is to give the world power over your inner citadel. And no Stoic willingly gives up that fortress. You must never forget, you are not just a product of what happens to you. You are the sum of what you choose to do about it. Life will offer chaos, uncertainty, betrayal, pain, and disappointment. These things are not optional. They are part of the human contract. They come to everyone, regardless of how prepared or deserving you may be. But you do not need to offer yourself up in return. You do not need to let misfortune write your script. You do not need to hand over your identity to circumstance. You can take the pen back. You can meet hardship with clarity instead of collapse, with structure instead of surrender. When you reject the mindset of victimhood, you take the first step toward real power, the kind of power that doesn't depend on perfect conditions, but grows from consistent courage, from the ability to face life with a steady eye and an upright spine. That is where strength is cultivated, not in retreat, but in responsibility. This mindset shift is not always popular. It disrupts comfort. It removes convenient narratives. It threatens the illusion that we are owed an easy path. It challenges the ego at its deepest level. It demands that you let go of the story that someone else is responsible for your life, your parents, your past, your circumstances, or your misfortunes. It asks you to release the grip of excuses and take full custody of your future. It asks you to look in the mirror without flinching, to examine your habits, your assumptions, and your patterns, not with shame, but with honest curiosity. And this is not easy. The mirror often shows us what we wish we could ignore. It is easier to blame, to point outward, to seek sympathy instead of solutions, to rehearse your pain instead of rewriting your path, to speak of wounds instead of working on healing. Blaming gives temporary relief, but long-term stagnation. It hands your strength to others and leaves you empty-handed. It invites passivity and shuts the door on growth. The Stoic does not do this. The Stoic chooses the harder path, responsibility. They understand that with responsibility comes agency. They say, "This is my life. This is my challenge. What will I do with it? What can I build from this? How will I use this as a forge, not a cage? What kind of person will I become because of this, not in spite of it? What traits will emerge from within me if I face this well?" That is where the transformation begins, not in avoiding hardship, but in owning the response to it with unwavering resolve. It begins the moment you stop resisting reality and start asking what you can do with what is right in front of you. It is in this space between what happens and how you choose to respond that your freedom exists. And in that freedom lies responsibility, the power to turn misfortune into fuel, to use adversity as your sharpening stone. The Stoics taught that circumstances are not barriers, but instruments. Life hands you raw material, and your task is to shape it into virtue. That material may come in the form of heartbreak, failure, loss, confusion, or challenge. But each piece, however rough, is part of the sculptor's block. The Stoic does not lament the stone. He studies its angles. He doesn't curse the resistance. He uses it to build his strength. When life hands you difficulty, you are being handed the same raw substance from which greatness is shaped. This is how the Stoic mind is forged, not by denying suffering, but by transcending it through action, principle, and will, not by silencing pain, but by using it as a signal to rise, a reason to act, a call to become more. Suffering becomes the weight that trains your character. It teaches you what is essential, what is temporary, and what must be endured with grace. It is forged in the choice to persevere when ease would seduce you to quit. It is formed in those long hours when no one sees your discipline but you. It is shaped in the decision to remain aligned with your values when betrayal tempts you to stoop, when anger tempts you to lash out, and when fear tells you to retreat. It is not forged in comfort, but in pressure, in discomfort, and in the trials that test your patience and perseverance. It is refined in the quiet, daily acts of courage that no one sees, the moments you choose virtue over ego, stillness over chaos, truth over convenience. The discipline to act with integrity when shortcuts tempt you. The resolve to speak honestly when silence would be safer. These small but decisive actions are the stones that construct your inner fortress. They don't draw attention or accolades, but they are the invisible architecture of your strength. That quiet resistance becomes your inner citadel, a place of unwavering clarity when the world outside grows turbulent, a place you return to when noise, stress, and doubt try to infiltrate your thinking. This is not just philosophy. It is a blueprint for enduring life with clarity, strength, and dignity. It is the Stoics' manual for spiritual architecture, a guide for becoming someone who cannot be bent by misfortune or inflated by success. It teaches you to navigate chaos with stillness, to meet cruelty with character, to hold yourself to a higher standard, not because the world demands it, but because your soul does. It is not abstract. It is action. It is putting your principles into motion. Stoicism, when lived honestly, does not remove pain. It invites you to face it with open eyes. It does not pretend you won't suffer. It simply ensures that suffering doesn't hollow you. It shapes you. It transforms it. It doesn't promise ease. It reveals purpose. It teaches you to extract meaning from difficulty and rise through hardship without losing your footing. And through that purpose, the Stoic mind becomes not only unbreakable, but indispensable, not just to itself, but to others, because one who is firm within becomes a lighthouse on the outside. Each time something difficult happens, pause and ask, what part of this is within my control? Write that down. Act only on that part. Even if it's 1%, that's where your power is. Refuse to speak about what others should do until you have handled your role first. Chapter 7. Discipline is love in action. Most people think discipline is punishment. The Stoic sees it as something sacred. To be disciplined is to love yourself enough to demand your best, not out of harshness, but out of honor. It is to hold yourself accountable to the version of you that exists beyond impulse and fatigue. To be disciplined is to recognize that freedom comes not from doing whatever you want, but from doing what is right, consistently. It is to put structure around your time, not to restrict you, but to guide you toward your higher aims. To choose long-term strength over short-term comfort. To say no to ease so you can say yes to excellence. Discipline is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up when the alarm goes off and you rise anyway. It shows up when you're tempted to quit, but you remember your principles. It's the invisible armor that guards your purpose. It's the steady march when no one is watching, the repeated effort when no one applauds. It's the silent promise you make to yourself and keep every day, because that's who you are and that's who you're becoming. It is the practice of showing up fully, regardless of mood, energy, or external reward. Seneca warned that he who indulges in pleasure must also indulge in its consequences. The Stoic does not chase ease. They chase excellence. They understand that behind every comfort lies a cost, and behind every discipline lies a reward. And that chase requires a framework, rituals, standards, boundaries. Discipline is the scaffolding upon which excellence is built. Without it, ambition is just a wish. With it, virtue becomes visible. Discipline is hard, but so is regret. And the Stoics knew which one made you stronger. They chose the discipline of daily effort over the pain of wasted years. They knew that every small act of self-control, every routine honored, every moment resisted when temptation whispered, these were the bricks that built a fortified life. They knew that the pain of effort fades, but the pain of neglect lingers. Discipline isn't a punishment. It is a deep and abiding form of self-respect, the kind that leads to a life you don't need to escape from, because it was built with care and intention. Establish a discipline anchor in your schedule, one habit that happens no matter what. Maybe it's a morning walk, a midday stretch, or an evening reflection. Make it small, but sacred. Let it remind you, you are in command. Chapter 8. Emotional Mastery Through Awareness. The Stoics never said, don't feel. They said, don't be ruled by your feelings. There is a difference, and it matters. Emotions, anger, sadness, jealousy, fear, these arise naturally and unavoidably. They are part of what it means to be human, but just because they arise does not mean they must rule. What comes next is the true measure of your character. Do you act on impulse, or do you respond with intention? That is the critical question. Emotional mastery begins with awareness. Feel the feeling without judgment. Let it be there. Observe it with curiosity. Ask what triggered it. Ask what it's trying to tell you. And then, instead of reacting blindly, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what action reflects my values right now? What action would honor the kind of person I am trying to become? You are absolutely allowed to feel. You are not asked to suppress or deny your emotions. The Stoics were not robots. But you are not allowed to let those feelings drag you off course. That is where the Stoic line is drawn, with mastery, not repression. Emotions are like weather. They pass, they change, they arrive without warning. But your principles, your values, they are your compass. They point you forward, even when the skies are stormy. Hold fast to them when emotions come knocking. It takes practice. It takes self-honesty. It takes forgiveness when you fall short, and courage to try again. But with time and effort, you can train the gap between stimulus and response. You can widen it. You can learn to inhabit it. That gap is where self-respect begins. That gap is where peace becomes possible, not because the world is quiet, but because you are calm in the center of the storm. Use the ABC method. Acknowledge, breathe, choose. When emotion rises, acknowledge it. I feel anger. Breathe deeply 3 times. Then choose an action aligned with your values. This trains your mind to pause, not react. Chapter 9. The Power of Solitude and Inner Clarity. We live in a noisy world, a world filled with endless notifications, voices, influences, and opinions. The Stoic seeks not to escape the world, but to create distance between the noise and the self. Solitude is not isolation, it is connection. It is the return to your own mind where the real work begins. Marcus Aurelius wrote in the stillness of early mornings, reminding himself to be firm, to be just, to be still. Seneca reminded us that time alone should be spent improving ourselves, not merely avoiding others. The Stoics knew that silence was not absence, it was presence intensified. When you choose solitude, you remove the distortion of other people's expectations. You can hear your own thoughts. You can separate borrowed values from true convictions. Solitude reveals what you truly believe, not what you've repeated, but what you've lived. It helps you ask, am I doing what aligns with my soul, or am I just responding to pressure? Most people avoid silence because it forces them to face their discomfort. The Stoic embraces it. They use it to reorder their thoughts, reset their priorities, and sharpen their clarity. Solitude is not passive, it is practice. It is a tool, a mirror, a forge. Schedule 30 minutes each week for intentional solitude. No phone, no input, just a journal and your thoughts. Ask yourself, where have I drifted from my values? What matters right now? What would the Stoics advise me to do next? Then act accordingly. Chapter 10. Duty, not desire, is the path to fulfillment. Desire is everywhere. It promises ease, validation, pleasure, and recognition. But fulfillment does not live in the house of desire. It lives in the house of duty. The Stoics understood that a meaningful life is not built by chasing what feels good, but by committing to what is right. Your duty is not something that changes with your mood. It does not care if you're tired, distracted, or afraid. It does not disappear when things get hard. In fact, it becomes even more vital. Your duty is to strengthen yourself so that you can be of service to the world, not because you're obligated by others, but because that is where honor lives. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being." That is the Stoic attitude. We are not here to indulge in every desire. We are here to fulfill our role, to show up, to be steady in a world that is unstable. When you live for duty, you do not burn out. You burn bright, because your purpose fuels you deeper than any praise. It is a fire that doesn't demand applause. It simply refuses to go out. It does not flicker in the face of difficulty. It steadies. Duty grounds you. It gives you direction when the world tries to pull you in 1,000 directions. It acts as your compass when every road seems uncertain. It reminds you who you are when the noise around you tempts you to forget. You become less reactive, less distracted, because you're anchored by something greater than momentary emotions. You are tethered to something deeper, your commitment, your standard, your personal code. While others drift with the tides of opinion, you remain centered. You are not waiting to be noticed. You are choosing to be useful. Not because it brings status, but because it brings substance. Usefulness is not just function, it is dignity. It is what allows you to walk into a room and bring order, not chaos, stability, not confusion. You realize that fulfillment is not in being seen, but in being steadfast, in doing what must be done even when no one claps, in holding the line when others fold, in showing up because it is your duty, not because it is convenient. You are not asking for life to be easy. You are asking yourself to be strong. You are saying, I will be who I am called to be, regardless of what the world throws at me. And that strength, born from duty, becomes a light to others, not because it seeks attention, but because it cannot be hidden. It radiates through your calm, your clarity, your consistency. People may not always say it aloud, but they will feel it, they will trust it, and they will be better because of it. Define your 3 core duties, to yourself, to your people, and to the world. Write 1 sentence for each. Post it where you will see it daily. When decisions become difficult, use these 3 as your compass. Let duty, not desire, decide your direction. The Stoic path is not grand or glamorous. It is disciplined, it is steady, it is self-owned. Your duty is not a burden. It is your bridge to strength, to clarity, to fulfillment, and your greatest duty, to yourself. Because when you honor that, you have something real to offer the world.